welcome back to episode 72 of What's the Dill. I'm your host, Pete Dill, and we got a lot of great stuff for you today. In this episode, we're going to talk about the International Day of Fasting for those in the Middle East. We're going to talk about me starting Bible in a year with Father Mike Schmitz. We're going to talk about the Miami Dolphins again. And then in our main segment, I'm going to go into this story about an essay that two bishops wrote on gender ideology and what that means for us as Catholics moving forward in our society. So thank you for checking in. We've got a great show today. You might be wondering why I got such an awesome vest on. Well, here in Texas, the weather just dropped about like 30, 40 degrees from what the normal high has been. It's actually going to go back up, but today it was like in the 50s, and everyone just broke out their crisp fall wear. You know, I drank a cup of coffee like this morning, looking out a window, just like, that's how I drank my coffee this morning. So that's why I'm wearing it. I thought I'd wear it in the show and just kind of show you the life that's currently happening here in Texas. So starting off with what's going on in the world, our top line news. Number one, October 17th was an International Day of Fasting and Praying for the conflict in Israel and Palestine. A pretty heavy topic to start off the episode with, but I think it's really important. You know, I think us as Catholics need to be able to face really hard and challenging topics head on. And this is a challenging topic. It's a terrible, terrible, terrible thing that is happening in the Middle East right now, happening in Israel. You know, the violence, the murder, the devastation that's happening is very, very disheartening. We have to remember to pray for our brothers and sisters in the Middle East, in Israel, Palestine. October 17th was an international day of fasting and praying to offer up, our penitence for those in the Middle East. You know, and there's something powerful, I think, when millions of people around the world all come together for something like praying and fasting to offer it up for those in need. And, you know, let's not lose faith that we should stop praying because we don't see an immediate change. Let's not lose faith that better things can come from this situation and scenario. And, you know, listen, I don't have the answers, so don't look to me for having the perfect answer on the Israel-Palestine conflict. But I will continue to pray for those in power, pray for the people who live there, all the people suffering, and just like praying for them. And let's not lose faith that we should still be praying. Do not think that prayer doesn't work. Do not think that prayer is not necessary. Prayer is more necessary than ever. Let's continue to pray for our brothers and sisters over there. And if you took part in the International Day of Fasting and Praying, God bless you. If you didn't, you can still pray. You can still offer something up for them. So let this be a reminder to offer up prayer or fasting for those in Israel and Palestine. Second topic is I just started Bible in a year with Father Mike Schmitz. I know it's like 2-3 years old, but I just started it and I'm like 10 days in. The nice thing is that I'm able to listen to multiple days at a time. So I've been knocking a few of them out. And yeah, in the book of Genesis, and then if you listen to it, you know that they kind of bounce back and forth from Psalms and Job. And I've loved my experience so far. And listening to it, I think it's so well done. Like many of you have maybe already known or experienced, it's a really, really great piece of content. Shout out to Father Mike Schmitz and all the people that Ascension presents. It's a powerful prayer tool. And I want to make one call out that I've taken away from the first 10 days that I've listened to. Something so powerful about Father Mike Schmitz talks about something so powerful, which is like in the first characters in the Bible, these first people that come into the Bible, so many broken families. Cain kills Abel. Abraham has a son, Ishmael. Noah and has a son that doesn't like, that is at odds with him. Adam and Eve have a discourse in the garden and accusing each other of sin. Like, there are so many broken families right at the beginning of our salvation history, right at the beginning of the Bible. And Father Mike makes this great point, which is that, like, God uses our broken families and our brokenness to still carry out his plan. And, I think it's it was a great reminder that like family life is so important, and family life's always under attack. Even at the beginning of the Bible, family life was just like families were at butting each other's heads and at odds with each other. And I was like, oh my gosh, 5,000-6,000 years ago, and families were still fighting with each other. Like nothing changes. Nothing changes with us humans. So it was a great reminder to remember that like families are important, and that we need to work through any issues we have with our families and work through our differences to help carry out God's plan. I love that. That was one of my great takeaways. I'll probably make some check-ins or some reviews or some call-outs as time goes on, because I'm really enjoying it, and I just want to shout out the team that made that because it's great. Last bit of top news. You know this subject is near and dear to my heart. The Miami Dolphins just won again, smacked the Carolina Panthers. Dolphins are 5-1, leading the AFC East. And, it's just all really good things going on with the Dolphins. And, I love the Miami Dolphins. And this is the first time they've really been good in a long time, pretty much my whole lifetime. And I like to talk about this in the podcast because I want you guys to know a little bit about me. I want you to know a little bit about me when the camera's turned off. And, I'm a sports fan. I love sports. I've always loved sports, played sports growing up, played sports in college. And, for me, like the Dolphins are one of those things that, I'm not from Miami. I'm not from Florida, I'm from New Jersey, but I've been a Dolphins fan my whole life. So that's kind of like a fun little factoid about me. I'm a Miami Dolphins fan. I've already talked about them in the podcast. And as the season goes on, I want to keep filling you all in so you can maybe live through some of my excitement. And who knows, the Super Bowl's in Las Vegas this year. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I can make it out there if we make it to the Super Bowl. But hey, let's not get ahead of ourselves. We got the Eagles coming into town this Sunday, or actually we're going to the Eagles. So that's a tough game. Eagles are great. So Miami Dolphins still cooking. It is like such a joy to watch the Dolphins and watch it with my son and, see him watch football, in basketball. I just love watching him watch sports. So it's been a real joy in my life. So that's a little bit of behind the scenes about me. I'm a Dolphins fan. The Dolphins are really good. Check them out. You'll love them. You'll love the players, the coach, everyone. Tua, the quarterback, he's a great Christian. So, what's not to love about the Miami Dolphins? Let's go. So that's it for all the what's going on in the world and the top line news. I want to jump into our main segment today. Okay, the main segment that I wanted to talk about is how do we as Catholics deal with hot button societal issues? How do we as Catholics deal with issues that are tense? How do we as Catholics deal with things that other people maybe don't want to hear our opinion on? But we know that our Catholic faith informs us to have opinions about these things. What I want to jump into is a specific instance that came in the past week where two bishops wrote an essay on gender ideology. This letter was a letter to Catholics, urging Catholics to respond to the zeitgeist of gender ideology with both truth and charity, because the topic has become pervasive in contemporary society. And they urged us Catholics to respond with both truth and charity. Now, I'm going to go into some of the details of what they said, but I think that hits at the home of how Catholics need to deal with hot button issues. Truth and charity. We know that all truth, Jesus is truth. He is the truth, capital T, truth. He is the road to truth. All truth is a path that eventually leads to Jesus. So responding to these things with truth is so important and so vital for us to do as Catholics. But let's also remember that when we're talking about hot button issues with people, our coworkers, our friends, fellow students, that a lot of times we need to respond with a level of charity. We need to cover things with sugar. We need to know that truth without charity is not how we're going to win hearts and souls. Truth without charity is not how we're going to win minds. Diving into kind of gender ideology that these bishops write about, this article in Catholic News Agency Says, like the bishops, many Catholic leaders have been working in recent months and years to determine just what the Catholic response to gender ideology should be, since it touches on many practical matters as well as deeper elements of faith, including what the Catholic Church teaches about broad topics such as sexuality and bodily integrity. And I think that's a really accurate statement of like, hey, as Catholics, we're like, whoa, like, transgender issues have just like come up in the past decade, and how do we respond? What is the truth on this stuff? What does the church teach on this? What do I think of this? And so these bishops wrote that, our Catholic Church is called to do as Jesus did, to accompany in a spirit of solidarity those marginalized and suffering, while still affirming the beauty and truth of God's creation. Can we be humble enough to accept that someone has a different opinion of us than us, and be humble enough to listen to their opinion, to be charitable in our responses, to, maybe not be so quick to point out what's wrong about someone, but to listen and gently guide towards the truth? Do we have that in us? Or are we just so quick to point out where other people are wrong? Again, truth with charity, because if we're just pointing out where people are wrong, there's no charity in that. People aren't going to then hear your perspective. They're just going to hear that they're wrong. They're not going to hear the words that you're saying if you're pointing out everything that they're saying is wrong. So they go on to say, compassion that does not include both truth and charity is a misplaced compassion. Support for those experiencing gender dysphoria must be characterized as an active concern for genuine Christian charity and the truth about the human person. This goes into the truth part. We just kind of address the charity part of talking about hot button issues or talking about gender ideology. But here's where the truth part comes in. The truth when it comes to gender ideology and transgenderism is that God created each one of us uniquely, individually, lovingly, in a good way, with us in mind. He did not just create us for nothing. All of God's creation is good. Just like in Genesis 1, God said, let there be light. He made light and it was good. He created creation and it was good. Each one of us was created with God in mind. God created each one of us with us on his mind. Like, we are unique to this world. And God wants us as we are because we're his creation. We're not just a random smashing of cells together that created a human. We are created in God's image and likeness. And each life is a miracle. Now you might be saying, okay, we've heard that life is a miracle, life is fragile. Okay, this old talking point of like, hey, life's fragile. Well, it doesn't feel so fragile. Well, I want to tell you some of the odds of how fragile life is. I want to talk to you about the rareness of you. Okay, so here's how rare it is. And here's how unthinkably, completely next to zero odds that you exist, that you are walking around. 1 in 20,000 chances that your parents met. Taking everyone together and the likelihood of them meeting. There's a 1 in 2,000 chance that relationship can result in kids. So just breaking that down, that the odds that your mom and your dad met each other, decided to have kids, resulted in kids, in that moment, the moment that you were created, your first cells were created, and not all the other possibilities of, different sperm or eggs coming together, results in a 1 in 10th power to the 2,685,000th chance that you exist. So that's like over 2 million zeros. So the reason that you exist at the very moment of your conception could have been another person, at the moment of your conception, you came into this world. God said, I want you in this world. I want you, Dan. I want you, Sarah. I want you, Jody, to come into this world. And at that very moment, it's a 1 in over 2 million zeros. 2 million zeros long. It's not even a number for it. It's literally next to zero, the odds of you individually existing. Now, by comparison, the number of atoms in the average body is 10 to 27th power. So we're working on 2 million zeros. This only has 27 zeros. The number of atoms in the known universe is estimated to be a 10/80th power. I mean, 80 zeros is incredible. That's an insane amount of zeros. So we're talking about millions and millions and millions times more rare than all of the atoms combined in the world. Think about that odd. So 80 zeros to almost 2.5 million, over 2.5 million zeros. The odds of that are so rare. So that was kind of a very clunky, chunky way of trying to describe something very scientific, which is obviously not my forte. But it kind of blew my mind when I read this because it is so rare that I exist. I mean, it blew my mind. I was like, wow, I guess I am special. And to think that God had you in mind when he created the world, had you in mind when he came into this world, had you in mind when he was dying on the cross, had you in mind. So God's creation is good. And each one of us to come onto this earth, we need to kind of go forth and act and feel special, that we're a special creation of God. I think it's worth saying that, hey, life from the moment of conception is rare, special, and important. And we as Catholics need to uphold that from the very moment of conception. And part of that is saying, hey, if there's these feelings of gender fluidity or dysphoria, it's at the core, you're special. You were made with a purpose in the image and likeness of God. And that's important. That alone is important. Not what the world says is to live your truth or, be as beautiful as you want to be. It's hey, God created you with a plan and a purpose in mind. And it's so rare that we're even here that is worth living out in the way that God intended for us, in the way that we are here in our bodies that he gave us. That's special. God wanted me to be a man. God wanted you to be a man or a woman. And, it's not just this now that, can be maybe seen as okay, well, what do we do now if you're having these feelings? That's why we need to support our brothers and sisters who are going through hard times, who are going through these feelings, who maybe feel this way. This is where the charity part comes in again. We need to be able to speak truth to this gender dysphoria, but we must not, as this article says, perform interventions, whether surgical or chemical, that aim to transform the sexual characteristics of the human body into those of the opposite sex. Again, hard to hear, but we need to affirm the embodied integrity of the human person. The embodied integrity of the human person that God created. So we need to support people that are going through this. We need to actually be hey, this is not just your problem. This is how can we help you? How can we support you? And yeah, I think that, it's not always easy to talk about this, and obviously it's a very hot button issue. So again, let's fall back on this idea of truth and charity. We always should fall back on truth and charity and support those that are going through hard times, going through gender dysphoria, transgenderism, and support them with the truth and charity. This article goes on to say another really, sums up kind of what I was talking about very well. And I think this is really great to read. The body and soul come into existence together in an individual human being at the time of conception. From the beginning of his or her existence, the human person has a body that is sexually differentiated as male or female. Consequently, one can never be said to be in the wrong body. Your most fundamental identity is that of a beloved child of God. And then they quote Pope Benedict, where Pope Benedict said, each one of us is the result of a thought of God. Each one of us is willed. Each one of us is loved. Each one of us is necessary. And I think that is powerful. Our witness as Christians should be that, hey, you're not just defined by being transgendered. You're defined by being the result of a thought of God, the willed thought of God, a loved child of God, and you are necessary for God's plan. We all are, including those who are transgendered, including those who are going through, these thoughts, these processes, going through this identity crisis. And I think that's important because when you really come down to it, fundamentally, it's we are God's and God made us, and that's what makes us special. And we're necessary. I'm necessary. You're necessary. And that can be hard to believe sometimes for me. that I'm necessary in God's plan. I'm kind of just a guy sitting around. All right, I'm trying to do my best, but like I'm necessary. It's like, yes, you're necessary. I'm necessary. And once we believe that and support each other in that with truth and charity, we'll be able to then, I think, have better dialogues and be able to help those who have more needs in areas like this, areas of transgenderism or other areas. So let's remember that when we're dealing with hot button issues, truth and charity are the way that we deal with it, the way that we go about talking about things like gender ideology. So thank you to the bishops who wrote this. I think it was a great article. You should go read it. Catholic News Agency has a great article and kind of summarization of what they wrote, and then read the essay. So that's it for today. Thank you all for checking in. Please write me a note, an email, a DM, anything to let me know what you think about this episode. Let me know what you think about talking to those about hot button issues with truth and charity. I think for me, that's really helpful to know about. So thank you all. Talk to you soon. Peace.